The 2022 Pokemon World Championships begin in 2 weeks, and excitement is at an all-time high. Worlds is the most anticipated event of the season. Some players have been perfecting their teams for months, while others will be unveiling their secret techs they've been saving just for Worlds. The World Championships are always incredible. We've seen players cement themselves as some of the best in the game here, and the quality of play is unmatched compared to other events. This World Championships is special for a number of reasons. This is the only World Championship we'll have in Sword and Shield. This is completely unprecedented. For every other generation, there's always been 3 World Championships. Even though formats change frequently in competitive Pokemon, Worlds has a big impact on how players think about the game. For example, after Seijin Park's win in 2014 with Follow Me Pachirisu, the general player base became much more interested in Follow Me as a whole. We also saw this in 2011, when Ray Rizzo won with an incredibly defensive, disruptive Thundurus. Thundurus previously had been used as strictly an attacker, but after Ray's win, this support Thundurus would go on to be one of the most common Pokemon for the next 3 years it was legal. We haven't had anything like this in Sword and Shield. While there were the Players' Cups online, and we did see some innovation there, it's nowhere near the level that the World Championships generally inspire. On the other hand, players may be sitting on 3 years worth of discovery that they've been waiting to unveil. Only time will tell. Worlds this year is also incredibly interesting because of the format itself. The rules are simple. As with all competitive Pokemon, matches are played in the double battle format, where you bring 6 Pokemon to the tournament that you cannot change, and you use 4 of them in each battle. On top of that, the current rule set allows for 2 restricted Pokemon per team. Restricted Pokemon are superpowered legendary Pokemon that are much stronger than other Pokemon. We've had restricted formats before, in 2010, 2016, and 2019. They're typically defined by how players handle the extremely powerful offensive threats in the format while taking advantage of their own behemoths. This restricted format, however, is different than all the others. For the first time since 2010, Mega Evolution and Primal Groudon and Kyogre are out of the equation. This is a big deal. Primal Groudon and Kyogre were 2 of the 3 main threats players had to handle in 2016 and 2019. Their power level was so significant that teams without them needed to be very precise in their construction in order to keep up. Kyogre and Groudon are still powerful, of course. In fact, they're probably the number 2 and 3 restricted Pokemon right now, despite their power decrease. But losing their primal form makes the opportunity cost of not including them on your team much lower. The number 1 threat in both 2016 and 2019 is somehow not a factor at 2022's World Championship. Xerneas dominated both previous restricted formats, but thanks to the introduction of Zacian as well as Dynamax, it's not seen any success this format at all. What that means is that, despite this being the 3rd restricted format in modern competitive Pokemon history, it's going to be unlike anything we've seen before. I am extremely proud to say that today's video is sponsored by the Pokemon Company International. If you've been watching this channel for a little while, you know that I really love Pokemon Unite. Pokemon Unite is a free-to-play game for Switch and mobile. It's one of my favorite games to play with my friends. I've probably put in 100 hours over the last year alone. Pokemon Unite has some cool features that aren't in other Pokemon games, like HoloAir, which are cool ways of differentiating how your Pokemon look. There's a huge cast of characters, and they're always adding more. I personally really like Venusaur, and of course, Greedent. Get 5 Unite licenses and HoloAir as special presents by logging in for a total of 5 days. Tune in to access free in-game benefits, receive gifts, and take part in special events like the new Glaceon Challenge. Oh yeah, and to celebrate the 1-year anniversary, the new mode, Boss Rush, has been added. In this first ever PvE-style quick battle event, players work together to defeat powerful boss Pokemon. The higher a team score, the better their rewards. Click the link below to download Pokemon Unite today on mobile and Nintendo Switch. Thanks again to the Pokemon Company International for sponsoring today's video. So, to recap, not only is this the first and only World Championship in Sword and Shield, it's also a totally unique restricted format where the top dogs are either totally new or significantly different than they've been in the past. On top of that, the format itself is unusual. Most formats in competitive Pokemon play out in a similar fashion. At first, you have Chaos. Everyone's using everything at the beginning of the format, as players grapple to find strong sets and pairings. Over time, the format settles. Players discover which Pokemon are strong individually, which Pokemon are strong when paired with another Pokemon, and which Pokemon can be strong under certain conditions. What this leads to is one team or multiple teams being seen as the top tier. For example, in 2016, it was the pairing of Xerneas and Groudon that dominated the entire season. And in 2019, Xerneas Groudon and Xerneas Kyogre had tons of success. By the time the World Championships come at the end of the format, players have a good idea of what the top teams to beat are, and they need to try to either counter them successfully with something less popular, innovate on them by bringing something new to the table, or use these teams themselves. Once again, this format has not followed a traditional structure. In past formats, there were some restricted Pokemon that were clearly stronger than the others, namely Groudon, Kyogre, and Xerneas. To give you some idea of the strength of these Pokemon, every one of the 106 players at the final day of Worlds 2016 had one of these 3 Pokemon, and many had 2 of them. In 2019, 63 of the 78 players had at least one of these 3 Pokemon, and many of the ones who did not perform as well. 15 out of the top 16 players had Groudon, Kyogre, or Xerneas. In 2022, the power curve has been flattened. Some Pokemon are still clearly better than others, but they are less better now than they were comparably in the past. This is in part because the power level of Groudon and Kyogre were lowered with the removal of Primal Reversion. In part because Dynamax serves as something of an equalizer since every Pokemon can benefit from it, and in part because there are more restricted Pokemon than ever before. Put simply, in 2016 or 2019, if you wanted to use Kyurem White, you would be giving up so much value, because it just wasn't as strong or versatile as Groudon, Kyogre, or Xerneas. But for this Worlds, Kyurem is, relative to past formats at least, both stronger and more flexible thanks to Dynamax, making it a reasonable choice for certain players. What that leaves us with is a much more open format than we've ever seen before. Rather than a few teams being established as significantly stronger than the rest, what we're seeing instead is well-constructed and well-optimized teams finding success, largely with players who have lots of experience with them. In a format where so many Pokemon are viable, it makes sense that experience plays a major role in a player's victory or defeat. A good matchup is only good if you understand how to take advantage of it, and a bad matchup can be mitigated if you deeply understand the risks you need to take in order to win. That puts us in a very interesting position. How do you balance gaining the necessary experience with innovating in your team? Or is it even worth innovating at this point? There are several teams that have found success throughout the format, and most of them are so well understood that any optimizations found at this point will likely be small, and the majority of the choices players will make surrounding their moves and stats will be focused on improving specific matchups. That isn't to say there isn't a metagame, or that every Pokemon is equally popular, of course. Some Pokemon have more usage than others, but looking at the field overall, I expect it to be very diverse. So let's talk about which Pokemon have risen to the top over the course of the format, and which Pokemon are on the top of players' threat lists to win the World Championships. The top dog when it comes to restricted Pokemon is Zacian. It has the best typing in the game, the best stats in the game, every move it could ever want, and arguably the most broken ability of any of the restricted Pokemon. On top of that, its signature move, Behemoth Blade, does double damage to opposing Dynamax Pokemon. Zacian only has one major weakness. It can't Dynamax itself. This means that you need to be really intentional with who you pair it with, as you'll be giving up a Dynamax restricted slot. Despite this, it's seen enormous success this season, primarily paired with 2 main restricted Pokemon. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wow, competitive Pokemon sure is complicated. How am I ever gonna learn all this stuff? Simple, by subscribing to this channel. Currently, none of my viewers are subscribed. You can help change that. Scarlet and Violet are going to be a huge reset point for everyone, so there's never been a better time to start learning more about Pokemon. Anyway, back to the video. Groudon vs Kyogre, a tale as old as time. One of these powerful Pokemon have won nearly every event this season, and for good reason. They have extremely powerful moves, and their abilities set up influential weather conditions that players can compose their teams around. Part of the strength of these Pokemon is in their signature moves, Precipice Blades and Origin Pulse. These are incredibly powerful spread moves that do enormous damage. Spread moves are especially valuable right now, as hitting both targets is a big deal when the attacker is so strong. Kyogre has a move even stronger than Origin Pulse in Water Spout, which is one of the strongest moves in the game, but it decreases in power as Kyogre's HP drops. Both Groudon and Kyogre are phenomenal Dynamax candidates, but they're also good because they can be used without Dynamax as well. Kyogre has better average performances across the board, but Groudon has far more tournament wins. Groudon is typically viewed as the less consistent Pokemon because its main attack is inaccurate. But for players who don't rely on accuracy or get lucky, it's extremely strong. Something interesting to note is that while Kyogre has pretty much only seen major success when paired with Zacian, Groudon has wins with Zacian, Calyrex Shadow, and Lunala. Keep your eyes on which restricted partners are used with these two behemoths at Worlds. The last two entries in the big 5 restricted Pokemon share a typing, though they actually play very differently. Lunala and Calyrex Shadow use their Ghost-type attacks to overwhelm opponents. Both of these Pokemon can run away with the game if you aren't careful, and they're flexible with their partners. Lunala is bulkier, while Calyrex offers more offense. Lunala has typically been a better Dynamax candidate, though Calyrex can definitely be strong in Dynamax depending on its item. For most of the season, players have used the Focus Sash to keep it alive, but Life Orb to boost its damage has been on the rise. Other items, such as Choice Specs, may see play as well. Lunala won the only World Championship it's been legal for, despite not being seen as a main contender back in 2019, and its usage this format has been steadily on the rise, so I expect it to perform very well at the World Championships. While these 5 restricted Pokemon clearly stand out, there are many other restricted Pokemon with their own unique strengths that may find success at the World Championships. The next two, often paired together, are Calyrex Ice and Palkia. These Pokemon work best under Trick Room, which allows slower Pokemon to move first. While they've had some decent success, a huge major win has escaped them so far, but Worlds might be a different story. Recently, a team with both Calyrex Ice and Groudon popped up, and Palkia has been used with Zacian in the past as well. I think both these Pokemon have major strengths, but also some pretty clear weaknesses in the format, so it'll be interesting to see if players find ways around them with their building or play. While most restricted Pokemon focus more on their offense, some prefer a more defensive approach, focusing on outputting damage and being difficult to remove. Yveltal, Reshiram, and Solgaleo could all have a deep run at Worlds, but their reliance on Dynamax makes them inflexible. My expectation is that if Reshiram or Solgaleo has a deep run at Worlds, it will likely be due to the experience of the player rather than the raw strength of the Pokemon itself. Yveltal, on the other hand, is a different story. Yveltal was never allowed to reach its full potential in the past because of the presence of Xerneas. With Xerneas removed from play and a massive new tool in Dynamax, Yveltal could absolutely make some big waves at Worlds. Some restricted Pokemon lean more into their offense at the cost of some flexibility and bulk. Kyurem White and Dialga have each seen some success this season, and though difficult to play, I think either one could have a deep run at Worlds. One of the weaknesses of teams built around Dialga or Kyurem White is that they tend to always lead the restricted Pokemon and always Dynamax turn 1. While this is absolutely a strong strategy, experienced players can play around it due to the inflexibility. I would love to see these teams find a way of using these potent Pokemon more flexibly. These are all the restricteds I personally think are worth mentioning. But of course, who knows what players will discover when testing. There's 2 more types of Pokemon this format, Dynamax attackers and support Pokemon. Let's talk about our Dynamax Pokemon first. Charizard has been one of the most influential Pokemon this format, despite not being a restricted Pokemon. Usually paired with Groudon, it does enormous damage thanks to Groudon's Sun powering up its fire attacks, and its ability which makes all its moves stronger in the Sun. Charizard's max moves are incredibly powerful. Max Airstream makes both Pokemon on its side faster, allowing Charizard to outspeed nearly every Pokemon in the format. And its signature move, G-Max Wildfire, is ridiculous. It does 1/6 of both opponents' health for 4 turns. While Charizard is a terrifying Pokemon, it struggles a bit on defense. Random rock moves have begun popping up here and there, and because of Charizard's poor bulk, it can be knocked out in Dynamax, sometimes even through Charky Berry. While G-Max Wildfire is the single most broken max move in the game, Charizard isn't the only Pokemon with access to this type of move. Venusaur has a signature Gigantamax move with the same effect, G-Max Vine Lash. Venusaur doesn't have the same damage output as Charizard, but it has something else, Disruption. Venusaur doubles its speed in the Sun, allowing it to move before every other Pokemon. It uses this speed to abuse Sleep Powder, an inaccurate move that puts the target out of commission for 1 to 3 turns. Unlike Charizard, it can function out of Dynamax. Venusaur is inherently inconsistent and volatile, and personally, I don't like it at all. But but for the Venusaur players who are getting lucky at Worlds, it will be a very valuable tool. The last two major Dynamax Pokemon are Regieleki and Thundurus. These Pokemon take advantage of Electric's strong place as an offensive type in the format, and can help speed their teammates up with max Airstream. They can be offensive or bulky, depending on the item and stats. Life Orb and Assault Vest are the two most common items, but they aren't the only viable ones. Safety Goggles has been popping up on Thundurus recently. These Pokemon have also seen some diversification with their moves. Recently, players began running Thundurus with the moves Eerie Impulse and Taunt, in addition to Fly and Wild Charge, to allow it to function in or out of Dynamax. Other notable Dynamax attackers include Landorus, Kartana, and Zapdos. Landorus and Kartana saw success recently, and though Zapdos has fallen off, it was very popular at one point. Kartana in particular is in an interesting spot, as players have realized that, thanks to Dynamax, you don't need to run the Assault Vest, and have instead chosen to run White Herb or Life Orb for more damage output. Kartana wasn't present at all after the beginning of the format, but it spiked in popularity around the North American Internationals. As a note, every Dynamax attacker, except Venusaur, has access to the move Max Airstream, one of the best tools in Generation 8 for controlling the pace of the battle. The last category of Pokemon this format is support Pokemon. These Pokemon aim to keep their partners healthy and overwhelming their opponents for as long as possible. Let's start with the best support Pokemon ever released, Incineroar. Incineroar has amazing defensive typing, great stats, Intimidate, an ability which lowers both opponents' attack stats every time it switches in, and some amazing support moves. Fake Out stops the opponent from moving for a turn, and Parting Shot weakens a foe and switches the user out, allowing you to bring in a stronger Pokemon without taking damage and in front of a less threatening foe. Dark-type Pokemon in general are in a great space, and despite being a defensive Pokemon, Incineroar can still threaten opponents offensively with fire attacks, thanks to how often Sun is up, or dark attacks, especially effective against Calyrex and Lunala. Speaking of dark types, Grimmsnarl has cemented itself as one of the best support Pokemon to come out of Generation 8. It uses the ability Prankster to support its team. For a while with Reflect and Light Screen to weaken incoming damage, but recently a new primary set has appeared. Grimmsnarl now are using the move Trick to switch items with a target, passing a problematic opponent a useless item and taking their helpful item away. For a while, this was the Iron Ball item, which puts flying Pokemon on the ground and halves the holder's speed. But recently, Lagging Tail has been picking up. Lagging Tail causes the holder to always move last in their priority bracket. But unlike Iron Ball, it doesn't take effect immediately after being tricked. So you don't get any value out of it until the turn after you trick. Of course, other items are viable too, like Light Clay and Babbery Berry. Grimmsnarl's main weakness is that it can only run 4 moves, despite having more than 10 it would like to run. Pay attention to which moves players have selected at Worlds, and how their choices support their specific team. Some support Pokemon focus less on supporting the team generally, and more on handling specific matchups. Gastrodon and Rillaboom both match up very favorably into Kyogre, and have use in plenty of other matchups as well. Gastrodon is the strongest it's ever been, thanks to it completely nullifying Max Geyser from Kyogre, and how valuable Yawn is in a Dynamax format. The ground typing doesn't hurt either. Rillaboom is a more offensive Kyogre answer, but thanks to the strength of Grassy Glide as well as the utility of Fake Out, it's a good bring into lots of common Pokemon. Other support Pokemon focus on helping their teammates move before their opponents. Whimsicott and Tornadus are the main players when it comes to this style of Pokemon, because they can use Tailwind to double their team's speed before opponents can move. While these Pokemon typically prefer to hold the Focus Sash item, other defensive items can be used with more bulky stat spreads, such as Koba Berry or Wackenberry, when the Focus Sash is needed elsewhere. The specific moves players select will be very interesting. Both Tornadus and Whimsicott have run multiple moves to influence the speeds on the board this season, such as Cotton Guard, Icy Wind, and Scary Face, in addition to Tailwind. Which of these moves players choose will largely be a function of how common they expect other Tailwind-centric teams to be. There's also Trick Room setters, which offer speed support for slow Pokemon rather than fast. Mimikyu and Porygon 2 seem to be the main ones right now, but there's lots of Pokemon which can fill this role. Porygon 2 has picked up in popularity. I personally expect it to be the premier non-restricted Trick Room setter at Worlds. Lastly, let's talk about some Pokemon I think could make waves that are less used right now. Dark-type Pokemon are in a good spot. I wouldn't be surprised to see either Moltres Galar or Umbreon have a big finish at the World Championships. There's lots of Psychic and Ghost-type Pokemon right now, and being immune to Prankster is a big deal as well. Foul Play is also especially nice thanks to the number of strong physical attackers in the format. Shedinja has flown a little under the radar, but it has a lot going for it right now, and there's a dedicated group of players who have been using it all season. It will very likely make it to the final phase of the tournament, and who knows how much further. It is a little inconsistent thanks to its reliance on prediction and frequent use of the move Ally Switch, but experienced players likely have a good idea how to maneuver it at this point. Colossal has the same Gmax effect as Charizard and Venusaur, and players have been trying to make it work all season. Will Worlds be the time the code is finally cracked? It's tough because of how poorly it matches up into both Groudon and Kyogre, but with the right innovation, I think it's definitely possible. Both Urshifu forms have some strong things going for them. While the meta isn't super favorable towards them at the moment, there might be something worth exploring for players willing to give them a look. Urshifu Dark in particular has an amazing matchup against Lunala, and a good matchup into both Calyrex forms, though it being so frail makes it difficult to position properly. Lastly, Eternatus. The villain of Sword and Shield story has gotten almost no play this season, but recently it had some very strong finishes at the Japan National Championships. Will Worlds be the time players finally figure out how to use this unique restricted Pokemon? This is all just my analysis, of course. There will definitely be things at Worlds that I didn't mention here in this video, but you should now hopefully have a good understanding of where things lie going into the World Championships. Feel free to leave any feedback in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed the video.